All right, we got to talk about some shit. Um, so I'm working with a lot of whippersnappers recently, and I kind of try to explain to them how life was back in the day, and I think it's important that little stories like this be captured in time because as time goes on, they sound increasingly unlikely and more like you're fucking insane. Explaining to kids the difference of when I grew up to now is more insane than when my grandparents would explain like horses and shit. Um, and a little microcosm of what that looks like. Okay, I try to explain to them what it was like to kind of like play video games back in the day, um, and what it was like to encounter a hard video game that you couldn't beat. So one, back in the day, games were fucking hard. They were brutal because they wanted you to play the game for longer. They were arcades. They wanted you to spend more money. And like when you bought a game, they wanted the parents to see their kid play in that game for a long time. Otherwise, they wouldn't think it was worth it. But yeah, so the games were brutal. You died constantly, and like it was rare there were kids in your school that could beat games. Everybody said they could beat games, but you have to develop clever little traps to trick them into proving they hadn't. Now, let's say you've got a game that you can't beat, right? There was no internet, okay? There was no internet. There were libraries, okay? There were magazine subscriptions that were $20 a month. Good luck getting fucking one of those unless it's Christmas. Um, maybe once every 6 to 8 times you go to the grocery store, you can bitch and moan and drag ass hard enough that Ma will just throw a Game Informer, a Game Pro, Game something. There were only like three at the time, and you might get one, and you would have this thing, and there would be like it would have like little articles about stupid shit that no one cared about, but like in every one of those, there'd be like three games that they paid attention to, right? And you would just pray to fucking God that your game was in there. It's not like you just look up and see what games were in this, month's episode of Game Pro. This was your one of four Game Pros a year. Okay, tops. And if your game's not in there, you're fucked, right? So how did we overcome this problem? How did we overcome this problem? Because if you didn't know how to beat a game and no one else at your school knew how to beat a game, no one at your school knew how to beat that game. No one beat that fucking game, period. Um, the way we got around that, and this is gonna sound crazy, is well, one, we hung out with all the friends on our streets. We all hung out. We spent basically our entire days hanging out either outside or in someone's house playing video games. Um, and streets had like these little gangs of kids, and they would just roam around on bikes and shit like it's fucking Pokemon. And we would do that. We would squat up. We would pick out neighborhoods, usually richer ones, and we would all get on our bikes and we would bike miles across town. No GPS or anything. Parents back in the day, they were all fucking. It was the '90s. They were working hard. They were busy. So they were like, fucking, I don't care. Just don't die. Cops were different. The world was different. There was no 9/11. It was crazy. Um, and so we would go to a neighborhood and on our bikes like the fucking Goonies, okay? And we would spread out and we would knock on doors. We would knock on strangers' doors, okay? Uh, Again, times were different. Um, and people would answer because, again, times were different. Pretty much always someone would answer. And we would just say, "You got any kids?" They'd be like, "Yeah." We said, "Can we talk to them?" And they would yell upstairs or something like that. They'd be like, "Yo, you got, it's like, hey, get the door. Come get the door." They come down the door. You'd be like, "Hey, yo, you got Sega Genesis? You got Super Nintendo? What are you rocking?" And a lot of times they'd be like, "I don't have any of those," because not everybody had them. You'd be like, "Well, fuck," and you would just leave and go to the next door. Or they'd be like, "Yeah, I do." You'd be like, "Are you got this game?" They'd be like, "No." You'd be like, "God," because everybody only had a couple games back in the day. Like one kid in your school would have like several games. That's about it. And you would just go to a different door. You would do that, you would do that, and you would sometimes it would take several days, and you would have to go home when the street lights come on. That was basically sundown. We didn't do street lights, but when it was sundown, it was like we were hungry, and our mom cooked for us because she's a G, uh, and everybody would go home. And sometimes it would take multiple days, multiple neighborhoods, but you find that kid, right? And you're like, you got Super Nintendo? Like, yeah, bro. Like, you got Contra? Like, no, dude, that's Sega. Oh yeah, that's right. You got Sega? Yeah, I got Sega too. You got Sega too? Yeah, man. Look at my house. I'm fucking rich. Like, you got Contra? Yeah, I got Contra. You beat Map 3? Yeah, what are you talking about? Map 3. The boss with the rockets. Yeah, it makes triangles. You do the triangles and the pillars, triangles, pillars, and then you hop the lava. And you're like, oh, shit. He's like, you only got to, he's like, you know there's like 18 levels, right? And you're like, 18 levels? What the? And you run out to the boys. You're like, boys. They're like, you know what I got? He's like, yeah, I got it. But boy, there are 18 levels. And he said the next boss is like a werewolf cyborg, way harder. We gotta go. And you would just fucking bike back home and get on the Sega Genesis or the Super Nintendo or the Nintendo, whatever you're playing, and you would kill the boss. And then for the next week or two, you'd be trying to get to that werewolf wheel thing. But yeah, you would bike around, knock on random strangers' doors in neighborhoods you've never been to before. Ask them if they got kids until you found one that had the game. Until you found one that had the game and had beaten the game. That's no joke. That's how real life was. Shout out Chase Ritchie, Austin Skinner. That was the original too. It went from there. Matt Walden's on that list. Who else? Oh man, fuck, so many kids on bikes. Uh, oh, I've just left out so many people. I don't have time to name everybody. I'm sorry. Sean Cubbage. What's up, dog? Who else was on that? DeAndre was on that street. JJ. I guess the females: Fallon, Emily, my sister. I don't really talk to girls back then. Or females. I don't know. Shout out to all them. Fawn Valley.